Hey there, welcome to a special edition of Latitude Photography Podcast where we're doing both the audio and video here on YouTube. So let's get into it. I'm really excited about this episode. We've got a lot of good things to talk about. I recently took 2 trips to the Palouse area and I came away with lots of panoramas, more than I usually get when I'm out in a shoot. My keeper rate for panoramas was like way high, and I just thought, well, this would make a great topic for the podcast. So let's talk about it. But there's nothing like being able to see them either. So those of you on the audio only, I encourage you head on over to the YouTube because you're going to be able to see all the stuff there too. Of course, per normal, I will have the images in the Facebook group. I'm also going to have them in the show notes on the website version of the show notes. And then also, there's going to be a full-on blog post about these images where I'll go into a lot more detail about the images. I'll give you the maps of exactly where they're located, where they're from, and of course you'll see that here in the video portion, and on the audio portion you won't see that, but you will get it there on that blog post. So let's dive in to all this items. This is Latitude Photography Podcast, episode 88 for July 5, 2020. Today is a solo show, and I'm talking about Palouse Panoramas. I'm just excited so much to talk about these because I really love the Palouse. It's a great place to go shoot, but when you can talk about and showcase and just really emphasize all the beauty that is the Palouse, that is best enhanced, that's best covered, that's best portrayed, I think, in the panorama viewpoint, in the panorama scope of things. And so I just wanted to do what we can to talk about that a little bit today. And I do have some announcements I do want to get to before we get to that, but it's just such a great place to get panoramas done. And it really, if you haven't been there, get on out there and do it yourself. And then I also have a listener question that I'm going to be talking about. So we're going to be talking about Palouse Panoramas, and I'll be talking about my segmentation series that is a very long-term ongoing series. And I'm going to show you every image that I was able to find in my library anyway, but every image that I have ever made of this segmentation series. Now, for those of you in YouTube land, that'll be in the second video put out today, or maybe tomorrow, but I will separate that out into 2 separate videos where the Palouse items will be one video, and then the segmentation stuff will be a second video. In the audio only, it's all going to be in one episode. So we're having a little bit of a segmentation of the episode that way too. All right, a few announcements that I told you I wanted to get to. Working hard on my Latitude Photography School. If you don't know what that's about, it is going to be an online learning program, online learning area for photographers, specifically those that enjoy the travel outdoor photography. And since I've got pretty much nothing to do between now and early August, then I'm spending all my time here in the office working on this thing, getting all the tech set up, getting all the lessons updated and out there and things like that. But for those of you who have already purchased and who will purchase my online course for master photo printing, if you get on and you buy that now, between now and the end of July, then you will automatically have 1 year added to, if you want that 1 year of the LPS when it finally comes out, you're going to get that. I'm going to send you a code, an access code for that, and you'll be able to sign up for 1 year of access, completely free, included, whatever you want to call it, for all those additional things that I'm producing and releasing there in the Latitude Photography School. So I've got the links here in the show notes or down there below the video if you're watching here on YouTube, and just take a look at it. The printing course, that is. See if that's something that interests you. I would love to have you sign up, and just know that when I get those other items out, I'm working on a course for beginners. And so take it from the complete beginning all the way to, I would call you more or less mid-level kind of a thing. And then I'm also working on a course that is even more complete right now called Design and Creativity in Photography, where we're going to look at the creative process, and we're going to look at the thought processes that we enter into as photographers. When we're out there, how do we associate what we've got with what we want to say, with what our vision is? And so I've got a whole course on just designing creativity in photography and how we can look at that whole process, how we can make sense of it all and hopefully create, much better images more consistently. And really the biggest thing is about not only learning about the idea of design and the principles that we're talking about there, but then just executing those things and making it happen for us. So once I release the LPS to everyone, those who have purchased it, they're going to be able to still have that full year of access, but then we're going to have it available for everyone in late August. So those who have purchased the course, you'll gain access to the whole LPS in early August. Everyone else will have access to it in late August. That's my current timeline right now anyway. Things, life does get in the way sometimes, and so things might be shifted one way or the other, but I'm really confident finally in these numbers because we've already sold our house. We already have an offer accepted on a new house. All I've got to do is produce, and that's what this next month is about. Produce, produce, produce. So it's happening, and I'm just so excited that it's finally happening. All right, so this offer ends. This offer for getting the year of access to LPS, it ends on July 31, end of business day, July 31, 2020. I do plan to put the site mostly in maintenance mode. What I mean by that is those of you that have signed up for the course, you're still going to be able to have access to it. But those of you that, everyone else, basically, the site is going to be like a single page saying, we'll be back later. And then I'm going to take that roughly a week, and I'm going to put everything together on the site and make it all happen there. And then we'll release it, for good for those initial people, and then we'll activate it again for everyone else later in August. And the biggest thing, I want to talk a little bit about this, the biggest thing that I'll be doing to set my service apart from everyone else. I really value the feedback and the requests and everything else I can get from people. That's hugely important to me. And what I want to be able to do is offer you guys who sign up, I want to offer you guys an opportunity to drive the material that I create. Because this is for you. This is a service for you. You want to learn more about something in photography, and I'm going to be able to most likely help you get there. I'm going to help you achieve those goals. If you're into the idea of travel and outdoor, excellent. If you're thinking, I want to learn all there is to know about portraiture, this isn't the place. If you want to know all there is to know about macro, yeah, we're going to include some of that. We're going to get some things going in that line. If you want to know about some ideas about flash, so when you are on site and the travel and you have questions about that, absolutely we'll be able to get to that. But again, it's that idea, if you're into portraiture or any, wedding photography, whatever the case is along those lines, this isn't the place. But you will be able to ask questions and say, hey, I've got this challenge. I've got this series of images. What do I do in post-production to really make this work? Maybe it's I've seen you do some stuff. How does this all come together? That's what this site is going to be, at least partially, if not largely about, is getting things for you solved, addressing your issues. Now, of course, with that, there's going to be potentially a lot of things coming in. I'm going to need to be able to take and splice the items that I want to do, but I think we'll be doing good there. So that's why I'm kind of starting to roll it out slowly, and we'll see how things go. All right, let's get on to this main topic, Palouse Panoramas. And what we're looking at here, I've got 10 images. So let's switch over here to my screen, and I've just got my Lightroom up, and you can see I've got a collection here, and the film strip down on the bottom just shows all these different images. And I'm going to start with my Palouse Panoramas. And certainly those of you in the audio, you obviously don't see my screen, but that's all right. I'm going to do what I can to make this the best for both worlds here. All right, and this first image is a black and white conversion, and it's actually kind of sort of similar to this second image. So let's take a look over here at this second image where we've got the rolling hills. And these are just nice wide scoping panoramas. And what I did really about this whole idea of the trip, I went up to the Palouse in, let's see, late May. What is the date on this image? I'm trying to think what the date on this image is. And I went up to the Palouse in early May, actually. It was May 7 for this first series, these first couple of 3 images. And then I went again June 14, 15, and 16. And then I also had another journey up to Palouse Falls. Let's see when that was. That was June 22. And so this first one in early May, the Palouse, while it's going real good as it relates to growth and all that stuff, it's still really early for the wheat. And it's not something that, to me, it was really speaking my language, as it were, because the wheat is just really small and immature, and you see a lot of brown, a lot of the ground, the dirt coming through. And I looked at that and I was just like, you know what? The shapes, of course, are amazing. Everything is just gorgeous here. And I really like the texture and how that was coming through, too. It was just a little bit different than what you normally get when it's full-on wheat and you don't see the dirt at all. It's all green and everything like that. So I liked what I had, and I loved where the location was. And let's take a look here. I'm going to try and describe on the map where this is. And it is just outside or south of Palouse Butte. And this little butte is not that huge, but this little butte is definitely something that, you know, just comes up to this point. And so they have this road that basically just goes around it, and not a single road, certainly several roads. And so you're just going around it. And as we were doing this, this happens to be on Kriebel Road, and this is an area where when it rains, it's just a mud road, basically a dirt road, and when it rains, which it was when we were there, actually when I was there both times, the mud just gets really thick, and it sticks. It's really weird because it sticks to your tires, and then it becomes like you're kind of like you're driving on ice or packed snow or something like that, where you just have no traction whatsoever. And the first time I was there, I was with a friend of mine, and he was driving his all-wheel drive Subaru. Even with that, it was just like really sketchy. Then I went back in my Buick, which is only front-wheel drive. That was even worse. And there was so many times I was driving down these little roads, which are just amazing, and then all of a sudden the gravel goes away, and it's just dirt, which is really mud. And sometimes you have these huge ruts in the road, and it's just, oh my, it was a little bit nerve-wracking a couple times. On this particular location, when I was there in June, I almost got stuck. Thankfully, I was able to turn around and come back out. All right, so where this location is on Kriebel Road, it is a great location if you wanted to look south and you wanted to look east or west. If you want to look north, you've got the butte right there in front of you, and so you're probably not going to get too much going on there. So this image is looking pretty much directly south, and of course we have a swath going, you know, pretty wide because it's a panorama. But we just got these beautiful undulating hills that the Palouse is known for, and the biggest reason I like this is because it's not Steptoe Butte, and I wanted to find something different. I wanted to find something that was still giving me that quintessential Palouse, but still something unique. And then this next image is even better in some regards, because I love how I cut out the horizon, and I just focused purely on those waves, on the undulating waves of the hills, and then we have the texture, we have the plow lines, we have all these other things just going and flowing through in this image, and it just really has a certain presence about it. It just makes you feel like it goes on and on and on, which it does. It's the Palouse. It does go on and on and on. But here we have those visual cues where it feels very tight, yet very expansive. Because we have the panorama view, it feels very expansive as well. Now, this next image is a picture from pretty much the same area. I'm going to go back to the map really quick. And so we can see I've driven down the road, and so I've come down the hill a little bit, and then it turns north, and then it turns directly, west again. And then again, I'm looking almost directly south, a little bit to the west, so a little bit south, like south-southwest or so. We're looking at Kamiak Butte, and Kamiak Butte has all of these wonderful trees on it. It's just a bunch of pine trees, and it is a county park, and you can go in there and you can actually climb to the top of the butte, but they close it at sunset, so it doesn't make really much sense for you to be up there for sunset. So unless you're going to camp there, it just isn't going to work out because they do lock the gate pretty promptly. But again, we have the same idea of those rolling hills, but in this one I backed off a little bit on that zoom. Let's see, this one's 166 on the zoom, whereas that previous one is 188 on the zoom, and I'm really leaning down, but also a very different location. But anywho, by zooming back a little bit, we're able to get some of the clouds, and with these clouds kind of just coming in, it just adds a little extra atmosphere, and it makes a little more sense in telling the story about these undulating hills, and then you have it somewhat, not really mirrored, but you have this contrast idea, this flowing idea of all these clouds and all these textures just coming together, and then it's split in the middle by like an empty texture, basically, the sky being pure, well, if it were in color, it would be blue, but just this pure, smooth area coming through. All right, this next picture was taken, let's see, these last two actually were taken in June, so I got back there. This last one I was talking about with Kamiak Butte was taken in June, so I actually got back to that same location in June, and so the wheat is a little more mature, and then, of course, this is when we had the slightly different weather as well. All right, this next image I decided to leave in color, and so pretty much the same area. Going back to the map, it is literally just down this Kriebel Road from the most recent image, and right next to a house. So someone is lucky enough to live up there in these hills, and it's just amazing. And with this image, I'm looking directly west, and the sun is setting, and we've got a whole bunch of beautiful colored clouds up there in the upper portion of the sky area, and then we've got just these really starkly lit, brilliantly, wonderfully lit hills, and with all of that greenery from the wheat is just popping like mad, and those colors are just going crazy. Then, of course, the contrast is going really good, so we've got really deep shadows, but we can still see the wonderful color. We can see the great textures coming through, and just lots of good things happening there in this shot. But again, it's not Steptoe Butte. This is something very different in the overall scope of what it is we're looking at when we're shooting in the Palouse. And so it's just something I really was so happy to find, and actually have been there a couple of times now, and I just think it's great. And let's take a look. I'm going to look really quickly on the develop settings. This one is actually an HDR panel. So not only did I do the panel, but I did an HDR influence on this where I captured it with different exposures. And then I had Lightroom just blend it in its HDR panel automated blending modes, and it did a pretty good job. One thing I'm looking at doing with this image, I can't wait to spend some more time with it this week. I'm going to do a compare and contrast, not only just the panel idea, but this idea of what Lightroom can do versus what we can do in Photoshop. There's obviously lots and lots of control in Photoshop, and so I'm going to then do a comparison and say, how much better can we get in Photoshop? And here's why Lightroom is awesome. It's so easy when you have it shot right. It's so easy, but when we go into Photoshop, there's so much more available to us, and so we're going to be able to see what's going on there and why that's so much better. So I do anticipate a slightly different rendition of the image because I'm going to go to Photoshop with this. Now, one thing that I really want to focus on myself is really that transition between the sky and the foreground. The sky and the foreground, there's just that subtle little kind of glowy edge and that little halo, and I just want to get rid of that. That's a little bit annoying, and I think I can just get rid of that in Photoshop real easy. Here in Lightroom, you don't notice it so much, but if I were to print this big, it would come out like crazy, and that's probably all I would see if I were to print this image. So since that is usually my end goal, I want to have hopefully as perfect an image as possible. Then I want to be able to see perfection as close as possible in my image and not have something like that haloed edge along the horizon. But the colors are vibrant, they're brilliant, they're amazing, and I know I'm going to be able to create that just as well in Photoshop too. All right, this next image I actually put in the Facebook group, and I asked, what do you like, this one or this next one? And that is to say, okay, let me describe it for you, just so you know in the audio only version. That is, it's a barn, and it's also very close to where I was. So if you get off Kriebel Road, keep on driving west to Kriebel Road, you're going to get to Ladau Butte Road, and then you turn north. You go maybe 500 feet or so, 400, 500, 600 feet, and you'll see this barn and just somewhere to park along the way there. So I was there for sunrise, and boy howdy, 4:56 a.m. is when this image was taken, created, and the sun just rises so early in June here in the Palouse area, but it was worth it. We've got these on fire clouds. We've got this beautiful barn that's kind of sort of disintegrating. It's falling apart. You can see holes in the roof, and it's got this little cupola up top, and then you've got these trees on top of the Ladau Butte. It's just gorgeous. It's amazing. And so I put the question out there just because I just wanted to know, what did you guys think? So in the Facebook group for Latitude Photography Podcast, I put these two images. And so when I go to the next image, it's basically the same exact image. It's just I have the foreground lightened, and then I also shifted the color temperature for that foreground area because it was really, really cool, and I wanted to control that separately. Well, pretty much everyone noticed immediately that the clouds also changed in their tonality. They were slightly brighter too. And that wasn't really my initial plan when I put it out there, but I was like, I'm just going to send it anyway. Let's just see what they say. And so a lot of people said, well, take the clouds from the first image and put the foreground from the second image and put them together. And so that's what I have sort of here. It's not exact from the same. But what I ended up doing was I just left those clouds alone, and then I brought in a different method. This is all in Lightroom, but I brought in a different method to bring forward that foreground. And so if I wanted to modify that just a little bit more, I just have to go into the Develop module, and I just need to grab my adjustment brush. And if I want to make sure I grab the right one, and by doing so, I'm going to be able to brighten up that whole area even better, and a little more. I shouldn't say better, but just more. Here, that's the right one. All right, so if I were to add, maybe another tenth of a stop or so to this foreground, we're going to be able to see it pretty decently, and it's going to come out really nice. So this is what I find interesting, though. And that is just the idea of this image where we do see some detail in the foreground versus the silhouette. Now, the silhouette, a lot of comments were just like, it's too big. It's just too much. When we have something that is that present, we need something that has some detail. That's what, you're desiring. And so when we come over to this other one here where we've got all that information going on, then yeah, I can understand. We have some extra, we're filling in those details. We're understanding that the viewer is then able to understand the nature of that structure and the feel of the land and all that other good stuff. Yet we still have the brilliancy of the clouds and everything like that. I think I personally prefer the full-on silhouette. So I'm going to need to find a happy balance because I do understand what these people are saying when they're like, give me some detail. And I can totally get behind that. I think the proof will be in the pudding when I make a print of this, where it's going to be so much easier to print it with just a silhouette, but to get it right, that would be an amazing challenge. So to get it right and to have that coming through just beautifully in a wonderful print, that is one of my goals, one of my challenges I'm going to give for myself. And I might have to wait until I have my print studio made at the new house, but this is on the list. That's going to be made into a nice big print, and I'm definitely looking forward to it. So thank you, everyone who gave me some ideas, gave me your feedback in the Facebook group, because it really helped me understand what you're going for and what you're looking for. And I can totally see what you're saying there. And so I think I have a good challenge, and I want to do what I can to make this work. Now, one other thing as it relates to the whole idea of halos on the edge. This is another item that's completely done in Lightroom. It's also just single shots. This is not an HDR. So when we're looking at the image and we're saying, do we have that haloed edge? Let me zoom in here, and those of you on the video will be able to see what I'm talking about. I'm going to describe it here. Right now, I would say, no, we don't really have the haloed edge because it just, Lightroom is doing a pretty good job of blending whatever those settings we have and making that transition work for us. All right, I'm going to zoom back out to 1:1 because that 2:1 is just too much. All right, so if I were to, though, take this setting here, and let's wig it out a whole bunch on the exposure, just to say we really wanted to bring our foreground to absolute brightness to life, then we can see this haloed edge thing going on, and it's just hideous. And that's just another thing to watch out for. When you're working in Lightroom only, you want to watch for those things because it's just not going to be perfect. That transition is just not going to be perfect. If I leave my adjustments really toned down and subtle, then it's going to work and things are going to probably be just fine for us. So it's just another lesson in how far can you push things when you're trying to push just a region, just an area. Sometimes, yeah, we see some limitations and it just doesn't work out so well. So in this one, it worked out pretty decently, though, because I left those pushes, the things I was trying to push, I left it really tame and subtle, or subtle, whatever you want to call it. Come to think of it, I actually think I had another image. I'm going to actually digress for just a moment, and I'm going to take a look at this in the library. And I think I had another image that I wanted to take a look at with you guys. That was a panorama. Here it is. And here's another one where it was basically the same idea as far as, I'm going to go ahead and put this in the images for this episode as well, so everyone can see it here. It's just a wider pano, and so we have a lot more expanse of the scene. And so with it being a wider pano, this is the one I certainly I did first, but still it just gave me a little more pause again to see, do we want information in that foreground area? A part of me tells me, yeah, let's go ahead and keep that there. But on this one, it seems like it might be small enough, and with cropping it just a little bit, here, let's unlock that so I can extend the width like so. With cropping it just a little bit down further so we crop out more of the foreground area, to me the solid black for the silhouette makes a little bit more sense. And so I'm liking what I'm seeing there. Okay, so let's go on to this next image. This is a vertical panorama. This is the exact same barn, actually. And it was such a productive morning. What was really crazy about this shoot was the morning was awesome, and then about 10 minutes after the color was gone, it started raining and it was drizzling, and it just didn't stop pretty much all day. And everything else that I got that day was just really different. And I actually went back to the room and just took a big nap because what was the point? It was so overcast and dreary and drizzly, and you're not going to get your overviews. I'm not going to have any fun shooting some more intimate scenes like I usually do. The next day it was on and off, intermittent rain. Had a great time the following day, but that one day where it was just constantly took a nap. And then I went back out in the evening and still didn't get hardly anything. But this image, same idea here, though. We have the barn, we have the black silhouette. Again, I could bring some detail back into that if I wanted to, but with it being so minimized, I decided I'm going to go ahead and leave it black. But then we have this beautiful color rising up, and then it transitions to the beautiful blue sky, the morning of the blue sky. Now, on this one, I did actually remove, there was a very subtle contrail going right through the upper third of the image, and I decided I'm going to remove that. And so that required Photoshop, but it was a simple removal, and it was just something that I think helped us focus in and hone in on what's important in this image, because when you have something else breaking it and just a visual distraction like that, contrail was, then it just totally ruins the experience. And I wanted us to just focus in on the light of those clouds and the beautiful transition to the blue sky. So yeah, that's what I did. All right, this next image is all about the expanse, and I just love this. I'm going to show the map here again, and it's on the Palouse Albion Road, and this was amazing because when I came on this road from the triangle area where you turn off onto this road all the way across, it was probably about 2 miles, give or take, 100% this beautiful, brilliant yellow canola color. It was just amazing. And as I was driving by, I'm just like, what do I shoot? How do I shoot it? How, what can I do? Because there's just, number one, so much awesomeness. Number two, it was just like, all right, I know it's awesome, but how can I portray that awesomeness? How can I convey what I'm thinking and feeling here? Because there's just so much good stuff here. And so I finally just pulled over, found a place where just this very subtle dip in the hill and this very subtle rise on the other side. And I chose a shutter speed of about 200th of a second because I wanted to keep, there was a little bit of breeze, and I wanted to keep as best as possible those items, those buds, even though they're really small, I wanted to keep them not just going to a blurry mess. But I also wanted 100 ISO. I was willing to go to 200, but I decided I'm going to go ahead and keep it at 100 since I can. And then I'm at f8. And when I'm on the develop module, I don't have any exposure adjustments there. I do have a little bit of contrast, 63 contrast added, and then I added some clarity and texture. That's all I did in the basic settings of the develop module. And so the exposure was pretty much nailed. But the thing about this image that I really liked, and the thing that just really struck me about this, is just that whole idea of the mood and the atmosphere. And with the 3-frame panel going across, I was able to capture that expanse, and then the simplicity of the composition is also enhanced because there's so much of so little, if that makes sense. There's so much of this brilliant yellow, and there's so much of these clouds. That's all you have. And certainly I had to work pretty fast because that wind is blowing and those clouds are doing what they're doing, and it was able to blend very easily, very seamlessly, and it was just gorgeous. Speaking of a seamless blend, that's another thing I should mention back on this other image of the barn. When I was working on this one, this is the image of the barn where we're zoomed back a little bit. The barn is smaller. We got the brilliant sunrise coming up behind it. And there was a section in there where, I think I see it here, there was a section in there where the stitching had a little bit of an oopsie. And I was like, oh man, why does it have to do that? Sometimes Lightroom just isn't all that great at lining up images. And it's kind of a disappointment when that happens. Here it is. And it's kind of a disappointment because it's just kind of like, those two things, why are you not lining them up? It's a horizon. There's no other way that it could or should go, and the rest of it in it. Plus, it's also not only is it a horizon, but it's a silhouetted horizon, and then it's just fluffy clouds above. Why it would make a decision like this in its, whatever it's doing to do a panorama, I don't know, it just really disappointed me. So that's something I have to take into Photoshop and fix before I can do anything special with this image. When it's low res like what we're seeing here on screen, it's not an issue at all. You barely notice it. And now, of course, you can notice it because I pointed it out, but yeah, you barely notice it otherwise. All right, back to this brilliant yellow. This is, when I had like 2 miles, I'm just driving, I did get a whole lot more, and I'll do some more blog posts and whatnot, I'm sure, about those images. But again, it's just the brilliance of the space and the lighting and just everything came together. And it's about the mood, and it's about just this whole notion of the contrast, brightness, darkness, brilliance, and holding it down. It's just lots of good things going on here, I think. All right, so then a couple days later, I had one of my latitude regulars. I've got 8 people who have agreed to come on the show with me regularly, and so we're doing, a series of episodes, whatever they want to talk about, whatever I want to talk about, whatever the case is. And so they've been willing to come on, and it's just been great. I really appreciate those latitude regulars. So this next image is from Palouse Falls. And so she's from Texas, and it was Bree Stockwell. She's from Texas, and she was visiting a friend in Spokane. And so she's all like, hey, can we go shoot somewhere? And I was like, absolutely. So since I knew I was already going to have been in the Palouse recently, I was like, oh, let's go to Palouse Falls. You can't come to Washington without going to the Palouse and Palouse Falls, but you also can't get to them the same day if you're trying to get sunset for both of those. So invited her to meet up with me at Palouse Falls, and we would, shoot from there. So I showed up just after 4 o'clock this one day. Let's see, it was June 22. And it could not have been more clear. And, standard landscape photographers and the like, a clear day is kind of like, what are you doing to me? Let me have something to give some interest in the sky. Let me have something to break up the light, to break up whatever subject it is I'm trying to photograph. And I guess it is what it is sometimes. So what we ended up doing, I ended up zooming in and getting some real close-in shots of the falls. But we also had, since it was bright and clear, we had this brilliant rainbow coming off of the falls. And what's amazing to me is this portion, this left-hand side of the image, feels like a black and white image, and it totally isn't. It just feels like that because this color is so brilliant over here. And you might be thinking, oh, Brent, what did you do to make that happen, to make that so brilliant? And all right, so this is a TIFF from Photoshop, so I'm not going to have my settings here. Let's go ahead and I'm going to take a quick look. I'm going to go to the folder in the library, and I'm going to show you what my settings were on that image. So here's that image, and we're going to go to the Develop module. And all I did is I bumped clarity just a hair, 25 on clarity, 16 on texture. Vibrance, I bumped it up to 15 and saturation to 4, and I'm on the profile of Adobe Landscape, which in and of itself is already fairly saturated. So yeah, I'm kicking saturation because of the Adobe Landscape, and then a little bit down here in these vibrance and saturations, but that's pretty much it. And it was just clear as day. You could see it. In fact, it was a double rainbow that we're not seeing here, but we did have actually a double rainbow going on down there. And so I then took a series of 3 images. Let's go get back on that image real quick. I took a series of 3 images right across the frame, and I knew I would get this big energy from the falls itself, and then it would be spreading out, and then we'd have this slice of the rainbow, and this came out exactly how I envisioned it, using a slower shutter speed, about a 1/13 of a second, so we can get some good water movement. At 50 ISO and 200 millimeters and then f/22, I needed a 1/13 of a second. I was also using a polarizer, so I could actually enhance the rainbow a little more with the polarizer, being careful not to cancel it out, that's for sure. All right, but I'm using a 70 to 300 at 200 millimeters, and then again 50 ISO on my Canon 5D Mark IV, so it could just really hopefully bring down that shutter speed. I experimented with a lot of different shutter speeds, and I liked this one the best for the speed the water's going, the quantity of water, and how the steam, or the mist I should say, is spreading out. Worked really good, and I was really pleased with how that came about. All right, let's transition now. This is all I have on our images for this time with panoramas, these Palouse panoramas. We're going to transition now to this whole notion, this whole idea of what we're dealing with on these things with segmentation and what that's all about. And for those of you in YouTube, that's going to be in the next video.